ask, does anyone have any questions? Does anyone have any questions in regards to the materials itself, right? Any questions whatsoever? I mean, I'm certain that you went over the material, or at least I hope that you have. And so, is there any questions off the top, off the rip, that you'd like to express?
Material and just videos. Any questions you guys may have.
No questions. All right. Basic aims and objectives, programs for decolonization. Well, obviously, this idea of the decolonization programs comes from the Black Panther Party, all right, and also the Provisional Government of New Africa, RNA, and various other organizations that sought to provide services to the community, right? The Black Panther Party program was survival programs pending revolution. Okay, I think I've talked about that before, all right? And how I thought that idea was absent of an aggressive or a proactive determination in regards to the need for us to address issues in our community that's not being served or not being addressed by elected officials and government. Okay. And so for us, and for me particularly, I thought it was essential that the survival programs become proactive rather than reactive. Reactive to conditions, but proactive to liberation and independence. So therefore, what I did was take the ideas of the Black Panther Party survival program and try to initiate them as decolonization programs, right? Programs for decolonization that encompasses the strategic and the tactical goals of the New African Independence Movement. Therefore, the program supports the idea of the movement. In other words, it's not survival pending revolution, it is survival as a course of the revolution. That it is through the revolution that we will survive, and not waiting for it to occur by osmosis or whatever idea that might have been thought of at the time when Huey P. Newton came up with the survival pending revolution after he was released from prison. And there's a whole other dynamic behind that. And so these decolonization programs are essentially the same thing as survival programs, but redux or reintroduced to our struggle as decolonization programs. Because in our thinking, it's a necessity for us to decolonize our mentality, decolonize our thinking, and as a process of doing so, liberate ourselves from our dependence on a system that does not necessarily want us to be dependent on them in the first place, nor do they want us there except for surplus labor. That's the only exception they want us here, right? To reap profits from our labor. And so the decolonization programs, as I state here, right, must afford tactical initiatives attacking the social, political, economic, and cultural manifestation of the disenfranchisement of New Africans suffered as a neo-colony. And it must seek the means to rid New Africans of oppression strategically means national independence. So therefore it means that we need to organize our community, right, into these decolonization programs. If we know people that's involved, engaged in the unions, right, we want them to become part of our union, right, a National Union of New African Workers, right? And part of that process is responding to our being wage laborers, right, in our social order, okay, in this social order, being wage laborers, right, and for them to understand that the system is structured, right, so that you will not become no more than a wage laborer, right, that you make wages for your labor, right, rather than you having any control of the means of production, okay. So we don't have means of ownership or control of the means of production. Only thing we do, we produce. We are producers for other people's profits, okay. And so what is important in understanding that is that as wage laborers or slave laborers, right, that our task is to create a condition for which we build towards ownership of the means of production, to take control of the means of production. And that's the reason why we want to establish our own union, a National Union of New African Workers. Because this goal of the New African Workers, it would be to demand greater ownership of the means of production, right? To ensure that the benefits that should be applied to our community is applied in accordance to the ideas that we'll be moving towards national liberation and independence. All right. So that's what's important about the first phase of the decolonization and the National Union of African Workers. So it states here that is a network of political activists in urban and rural areas who function in organizing principles of FOLANAT, Front for the Liberation of the African Nation, and we know what that is, in the workplace, right? So what I'm saying is for you, if you're working in the industry of any sort, right, then you may have a responsibility to bring the issues of unionization to that industry, right? But not only unionization to the industry, but unionization in the understanding that we're building towards national independence and freedom. Okay, so we want to bring to the workers, right, the idea of the New African Independence Movement, right, and why we need to unionize, why we need to build the structures from which we can ultimately be able to have control of the means of production and build on that. So the primary goal objective is to raise political consciousness, I just said, of the New African workers to the socioeconomic condition inherent in the system of monopoly capitalism. That is the primary goal, all right? We know that we have some of our workers involved with the UAW, 1199, and various other unions, right? But they function in a capacity that serves the interest of the union, but not necessarily for the interest of liberation and independence of our people, okay? Yes, they will fight for better benefits, salary increase, health care, and et cetera, from the corporations, right? From the industries, right? But not to a point where we're arguing and raising the question of where do we build our own and for our own towards our own independence. So it'll be the responsibility of New African National Union of New African Workers to address the problems of affirmative action as minimum goals in the workplace, to call upon the owners and the means of production to relinquish profits for the development of New African communities. So our demand in terms of the union is to ensure that any profits that they make are based upon our labor, that a percentage of that money goes back into the community, right? That's a demand. The unions don't usually make those kind of demands, right? They're just working for the benefit of the workers, but not for the benefit of the community, right? So that's a distinction that we want to make in terms of our unions, all right? And let me see what else. We'll also be responsible for establishing a national body of workers and union formation to fortify the political thrust of independence movement and economics in the economic sphere. So we want to unify our understanding that we're building towards the ideas of independence, that we want to take our resources, take our what we have learned, our skills, and be able to motivate people with the understanding at some point in time, we need to take this information, take these skills, take these resources into the Kush, into the national territory. Right? Eventually, it will be the responsibility of New Africa to develop a national economic system as a foundation for the liberated national territory, as I just said, in Kush, and establish a New African nation. Right? Furthermore, because of the role of the National Union of New African Workers, will play in support of New African workers, has potentially become the most powerful sector within the New African communities. Right? If you look at New African organization or revolutionary organization out of Africa, more often than not, you see the organized unions being being as influential as any other political party, right, within those unions. For instance, take an example, ANC, right, the African National Congress out of South Africa or Tanzania, right, and what it's able to do. They had a complementary union force that was part of the organization, right, part of the ANC. And that union force was able to organize strikes and other kinds of demonstrations in support of the ending of apartheid. All right. So very similarly, that's what our National Union of New African Workers would be able to do. or look towards to do, right? And therefore, I break it down in 10 particular issues, particular aspects of how we're going to move forward on that, right? And that's the call for the rank and file democratic control of the unions, right? Currently in existence, and for the elimination of racial practices. So that means we're also going to be challenging the unions and how they function, how they operate. More often than not, we find these unions are headed by white folks, okay? And their basic interest, for the most part, is of the white folks, not necessarily ours or us, right? So within the union, we should have a body of new Africans who are activists, right, within that union to ensure that the resources or the demands of the union also apply to the needs of the new African community. Okay, call for preferential hiring and advancement. We want to make sure that our brothers and sisters who need jobs can get jobs. Okay, as we build towards independence. All right, freedom ain't free. Okay, and therefore we have to figure out ways how to get as much resources as we possibly can from out of the system. And the unions is one of the tools for which we can use to do so, right? So we want to make sure that we have our people in a position that we need to have them in to make decisions that support our struggle. A call for the escalator clause, a union contract, to ensure that any money that they receive is not held against recession and inflation, right? That is indexed to the ideas of inflation and recession in the social order of this capitalist imperialist system. Call for a shorter work week, right? There are countries in this planet, on this planet, that have a 4-day work week, or they have a stagnant work week, where you work 3 days, off 2, and then on 4 days, and off 2, or something of that nature, off 3. Okay, we need to do that as well, and broaden the basis for which those days off is still complementary to the pay increases that we need to have to be capable of taking care of our financial and economic needs in our households and in our community, right? Grievance process. We want to ensure that we have fair and honest grievance process within the unions. Complete independence of unions from the government interference, right? That the unions should be able to not be coattailed or kowtow to the government in terms of what their, and when I say government, I'm talking about the corporate interests of the government in terms of their needs as opposed to our needs. And naturally, we want to ensure that the union operates in regards to what's going on in the penal slave system, right? That we demand that if we're going to be union on the inside, there need to be unions on the outside, need to be unions on the inside as well. We want to ensure that our people on the inside of the penal slave system, once they are released, that they have a greater potential to get involved in a union job, right? The establishment of a national import quota and on products of foreign corporations. Why is that important? Because more often than not, we find that foreign corporations will flood this market and reduce the capacity from which the American quote unquote worker is able to also produce and reap benefits from their labor. All right. So there has to be a balance between the imports and exports, and not only for the United States, but also for other workers around the world, where this country put up tariff laws and tariff blockades, and in so doing, prohibit other people from those resources that's available in other countries, and that essentially keeps the prices up, right? Keep the prices up because there's less competition among the various producers of maybe of the same product. And so we want to end this kind of this idea of economic austerity and or economic bullying that the U.S. does both inside and outside this country. As I believe I made mention before that one a union leader, a guy by the name of Sean Fain of UAW, he's calling for a general strike in 2028, right? And naturally, we support that, but we want to ensure that these general strikes have our concerns as part of the demand for workers here in this country. Naturally, we want to ensure that, at number 9, we want to ensure that business pay their fair taxes, right? One of the problems that we have in terms of this corporate interest or this corporate government is that many of the corporations are not paying their fair share, not paying their full amount of taxes, which is burdening the general population at large, who the corporate government use their tax monies to engage in imperialist wars and imperialist other undertakings. Okay, if in fact that we are shedding blood and treasure, right, for the expansion of corporate interests around the world, then naturally you would expect the corporations to pay their fair share for those kind of ventures, and which they're not doing. They're using their taxpayers, what they call using other people's money, right, rather than their own. And so for us, it's important that our union, right, make the demands that the corporate interests, right, the bosses, pay their fair share in taxes and offset the kind of programs that needed in our community, particularly as regard to healthcare, childcare, drug rehabilitation programs, business parole training programs, senior citizen programs, and et cetera. Right? And lastly, 10, the multinational corporations, in conjunction with the U.S. government, to give reparations to new Africans for subsidized industrial construction and agricultural development in the new African nation. And that's what is really important in terms of understanding what we want to organize in terms of our new African workers. That they, if they in fact are new Africans and believe in our own sovereignty and building towards our own sovereignty, then one of the things that we want to demand and understanding of that is that at the time for reparations, when we win reparations, that we ensure that money is going into our capacity to have industries, factories, agricultural development in Kush, all right? And that we will not lose a step in terms of our own wealth building, right, as a nation, okay? But if the workers are not prepared to make those kind of demands, right, then ultimately when we talk about reparations, we only talk about a money transfer, okay? And that's a problem that we have with the people. Most people talk about reparations today. They only talk about a money transfer. We're not talking about building industries or national liberation or independence of any sort, right? And more often than not, if they were to grant reparations, we're strong for them to grant reparations, and if it was only a money transfer, ultimately the money will be sent right back to them. We're going because we don't have no productions, we don't have no industries, right? So what we're going to buy from, we're going to buy right back to them and give the money right back to them, right? From our own labor. So that it is a false notion to believe that we can gain reparations and that we're going to be free. That's not even rational thinking in my understanding. All right. So as we understand the basic principles of gee, where's I lost my page. Of the New African of the National Union of New African Workers, right? It's important for us to know that these democratic demands within the program for decolonization build the foundation for the national political activists can organize New African workers and become motivated factor in building the class struggle for national unity and independence movement. Again, our most difficult phase in our overall movement is the class struggle for national unity. All right. It's going to be the longest struggle. It's going to be the hardest struggle, right? Because we have to change people's mind and motivate our people with the idea that we are fighting for independence and sovereignty of a new African nation, right? And therefore, the workers, right, when they go to these unions or engage in these unions, they must go in the union with the understanding, right, with that understanding that we are utilize these unions for the resources for independence, all right? We want to siphon off from these units and move that money, move those resources into our independence movement, okay? And also learn how to maintain these systems of governing, right? That often are in this country are naturally institutional racism and they are racist, and therefore we're trying to end the forms of racism that we are experiencing. All right, now nationalized New African student. Yeah.
Um, Sometimes I get a critique from people when it comes to like these listed command demands, because sometimes they're like, oh, well, why are you calling for, let's just say, a shorter work week? Doesn't that just help America? How does that tie into, just a black cause? And I kind of want to just really hit on that question itself, because I think sometimes people lose sight of what the mission is, because what they see is like, oh, we're just demanding that, and it's perceived as you're just trying to help America get better, but you're not actually trying to, or they don't understand the connection between these demands and how is it connected to our struggle.
All right, that's a good issue to raise. Let's deal with this way, right? I work 40 hours a week. Okay. Me and my wife, we go out, we go 40 hours a week, then we come back home, and what we do, we get on computers and get on the other work, other things that we try to take care of during the course of the week, right? More often than not, back to work, right? Political work, our political work, okay? Now, if we had another extra day or a couple of days, right, we can get more work done, right, for the movement, right, outside of being in the workplace, and also receive the same benefits salary wise for the work that we do for the 4 days or 3 days that we're working for our enemy, right? Basically, that's what we're doing. We're working for our enemy and sustaining the corporate interest. Okay, so for us to be able to make these kind of demands on the corporate interest, right? We're basically telling them, say, listen, for my labor, right? You're gonna give me this kind of money, right? And then I'm going to be able to attend to the issues that I needed to for 3 or 4 days, right? Based upon our needs in our communities and our needs for our nation. All right. So what it does, it frees us up, right? And then we don't lose any money, right? Or from our labor as part of that process. Okay. So that's the kind of demand that we want to make on the corporate interest, right? Knowing that they're going to resist, and knowing that we're going to have to create means for which we can make those kind of demands, like strikes, like protests, like demonstrations, or sabotage. Okay, and that capacity to force the issue. All right. And again, like I said, freedom ain't free, right? We got to put in the work, and this is a the movement does not pay well, okay, if at all, okay, and so but we're not in the movement for pay. You know what I'm saying? We're in the movement for freedom, all right. And so what we need to do is be able to apply pressure on those who does give us this money to free us of in the capacity, whereas we can do movement work. Okay, so that's one of the reasons why. That's the explanation that you can give people on the basis of why we make those kind of demands. Is there any other question? All right. Nationalizing New African students, right? There's been much talk. Matter of fact, I was talking to a comrade the other day, a brother by the name of Devin, right, who was saying the same thing. Another brother, I can't remember who it was, who making the same thing, that we need to devise a national student alliance, particularly Black students across the country, those who are Black student unions, student associations, and etc. Right? We need someone to I don't know if it's been done or not. I don't have a copy of it, but if anyone can compile a list of New Africans or African American student associations or BSUs, right, on college campuses across the country, right? Let's get that list together. Let's build that list up, all right? Identify who they are. Identify the leaders of those organizations and on these college campuses. All right, let's do that. Let's begin with that process. Then once we do with that process, then we introduce ourselves to them. Right. We introduce ourselves to them in the capacity for which we say the necessity for a national. And we can start with this way: a national student congress or national student convention of all these BSUs and BSAs and etc. Right? That we have a national convention to discuss how can we organize ourselves in a more unified determination and understanding our struggles for national liberation and independence for the sovereign of the African nation. More often than not, many of these students are in these schools, right, so that it become a better paid cog in the wheel of capitalism. okay, for the most part, right? And that's how we've been taught, that's how we've been trained, from our parents. Go to school, you get a better job, and you do better for your family, etc. Right? No one says go to school, get better information so you can be a revolutionary and support the national liberation and independence of our people. Okay. That is the problem. That's problematic. And so for us, building the National Alliance of New African Students is for that purpose, under 49, right? Our goal, it would be the responsibility of NONAS or NANAS to formulate a national direction of school campuses across the country to support the development of the New African Independence Movement and have the New African History programs established and taught and maintained by professionals who are supporters of the independence movement. What that also means is a necessity for a national curriculum, right? I've been talking to professors for years now, trying to get us, those who are part of the African Study program, etc., for us to sit down and create a national curriculum, right? Books, syllabus, materials, right? So at minimum, right, we have a minimum understanding on a national level what our goals and objectives, our raising of consciousness, our understanding of our history and the politics involved for our movement, we at least be on the same page at minimum for what our studies are on the school campuses. Okay, so we need a national curriculum. In as much as they are trying to prevent us from learning our history, right, we must be demanding of a national curriculum until we all be on the same page. At least we say that the majority of our students across the country has read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different books, right? So we'll have that kind of a clear understanding of what has been written in regards to, particularly in regards to the issues of resistance. All right, that is very important. That they do not teach. Okay, so that is one of the goals and objectives of NUNAS, right? Okay, to have new African students become more aware of their responsibility in independence movement by organizing tutoring courses in high schools and develop liberation schools in ghettos and barrios. All right, so it is going to be these college students who will take on the responsibility to create these tutoring programs in the high schools. All right, I remember when I was in high school back in the 60s, 1967. I think in 1967. My math tutor was John Carlos, right? He was a student athlete at San Jose State University, and I was going to San Jose. I was going to San Jose Overfield High School. Okay, they had a core relationship between the educated, progressive organizers on campus, like college campuses, with the high schools. I used to go out. I was chairman of the BSU at my high school, right? And I used to go out with the chairman of BSU at City College and the chairman of BSU on State College. The three of us used to go out and do what we call talk-ins in different schools, right? And share our information, what's going on in our schools with other schools. Okay, we don't have that kind of license going on between our students and on all levels, right? So that needs to be developed, and our new African Alliance of our National Alliance of New African Students will be a function in that capacity to establish our relationship with our younger scholars, right, in the high schools and the elementary school, right, so that they can see a track of where they can be moving towards in their evolution in education. Down at the bottom of that page, I said this program is dealing in the areas of education will allow NANAS to become the motivating factor ensuring its development and its success. The following are NANAS programs. And then I listed what I suggested would be the programs of our students. The students' election of community control boards, supervise the schools and New African community, right? We need to make sure that these school boards that they have are influenced by our community, right? That the decisions they make serve the best interests of our community. And one way of doing so is that our students must be organized to go to these school boards and demand either we have control of them or demand how money is being allocated in the schools and the diversity in the schools and the curriculum in the schools. Okay, these are the demands that we want to make on the school boards. Two, establish an educational system of curriculum, as I may mention before. We need a national curriculum that supports our group think, is the term I like to use, where we're thinking alike, right, in terms of our overall movement, overall struggle. That the information that we have it coincides with our efforts to build that movement, and rather than oppose. So we're unacceptable to read material that says Columbus discovered America, for instance, right? Rather, we want to read books like Before the Mayflower by Leon Bennett, or Before Columbus by Ivan Van Sertima, right? That teaches the history of African voyage to the Americas long before what is now quoted in 1619, when they brought the first African slaves, African people to enslave in America. All right. So it's important for us to establish our own curriculum and be able to build on that. And involve parents. We need to get our parents of students also involved. So these students should be able to tell their parent, right, to come to school utilize the schools. Yeah, Before the Mayflower. Yeah, exactly. That's a good book, right? One of the early books by Leon Bennett. Now Leon Bennett used to be a writer for Ebony magazine. Now I'm not saying that he is the best of historians, but it is a foundational book for you to move forward. It's one of the first ones that I've read to understand what Africans was here before, right? What Africans was here before Columbus, before the Mayflower. Yeah, indeed. Okay. And so that is a good foundational book. But then when you get in deeper into that study, then you want to go to Ivan Van Sertima, and you want to go to what's the brother's name? Starts with a D. All right, it'll come to me, and I'll get it to you. Right, I'll get his works. African brother. Okay, it'll come to me. All right, so number 3, parents. We don't get the parents involved, right? If there's issues, it go. Pardon me.
Diop.
Yeah, Diop. That's right. Diop. That's why I said it was a D. Yeah. Diop. Get Diop's work. The African civilization of what is it? African civilization, world civilization, Africa, something like that. That's one of the books that he wrote. Right. Diop is what? He's a giant. A giant. If you don't get that book, try to get the book from Diop. Under the direction of Fullerton, he supported a program from trained Black academicians, right, historians and intellectuals. We want them to become involved and engaged in Fullerton. They need to be invited and engaged in Fullerton. Our scholars, our academicians, our historians, and etc., our intellectuals, right? They need to be able to articulate, right? And we have to demand of them to articulate what is the nature of our struggle, right? And how do we move forward in regards to that? Val, I see you got a hand up. Val, you got your hand up?
Nope, no, I don't. Sorry, it must have been an accident.
Okay, all right. So train Black academicians and sort of we need to try to engage them and try to influence them to become more involved, more engaged in the struggle. They have the information, they have the knowledge, right? But more often than not, they are beholden to the academy. They're beholden to the academy rather than to the movement, okay? And that's problematic, all right? They're looking for tenure rather than looking to build a movement, right? So that's problematic, and they have to be addressed in understanding that, right? Support Fullerton's position in community groups should be entitled to use school facilities. When we want to use whatever facility, give you an example. The schools that are in our community should be run and controlled by our community, right? The schools are open from 8 to 3 or 8 to 4, right? Those schools, those buildings should also be used for program development later in the evening, right? They should be open to the community, all right? whether it's gymnasium or auditorium, right? It should be made available, okay, to the community for the things that we need to discuss, to organize, and etc. So that's an important factor that we want to be able to charge these institutions and to make them more connected to the community, right? From that direction to call for dismissal of school officials who victimize and insult students and racial groups and etc. Right? We should have that kind of program. Whereas it's necessary for us to go and protest, strike, and etc. to get rid of a racist teacher, right? Or to find that there's a curriculum that speaks about black people, brown people, and devaluing black people, dehumanizing black people. If they got that kind of material out there, we got to tell them we're not having it, right? Anything and everything that dehumanizes, devalues, demeans, degrades black people on any level, we have to abolish it, period. And that's why we expanded the idea of what it means to be an abolitionist, right? So we want to abolish anything and everything that devalues, dehumanizes, degrades, demeans black people, brown people, indigenous people. If it does that, it needs to be abolished. And this is our way to fighting against white supremacy, okay? And so it's important that students be involved in that process, but they have to have their own decolonized mind, right? They have to be decolonized. They have to be liberators. They have to be emancipators, and they have to be abolitionists in order to do so. Support the establishment of community liberation schools, right? That's also important, right? To build these liberation schools. So outside of the structured institutions of learning, right? We need to build these programs that you have here today, right? But we need to have it in the community. I'm trying to establish here in Rochester, right? I'm trying to establish an ongoing study group right here in Rochester. It is difficult. It's hard for getting people out of their houses as a result of COVID, right? And being shuttered in, right, for all that period of time. And now getting back out in the public, it's difficult to remove them from the comfort, right, of being at home and some of the discomfort of being at a place where of learning or for organizing and etc. But we're in the process. Again, I'm organizing what are called movie nights, right, to try to get people out at least once a month. Once a month, we have a movie night at the office where I work at, right, to get people out. We have a movie on the 30th called Conversations, the Black Revolutionary Traditions. Okay, and it's going to be important movie to have, right? And then from there, we're going to talk to them, right, who attend about building an economic justice committee, so we can start building a committee to fight against poverty in the city of Rochester. So, and lastly, when we're going to talk about high school students,
what's that movie called?
It's called Conversations, Black Radical Tradition. Black radical conditions. Let me see if I can. Here, let me. I'll find it for you. I'll find the promo that I have for it, and I'll put it in the chat. Oh, I got it down here. Downloads. Movie night. I know how do I copy this? I gotta copy it. Copy. Geez. Oh, here it is. Copy. Let me see if we go in the chat. Paste. There you go. All right. So check that out. Now, when it opens up, where underline is, when you open up and you see the underline, tap on the underline, and the 2-minute trailer of the film, of the film will come up, right? And you can check out the trailer. for it. And of course, yours truly is the first face you'll see, ironically. But nonetheless, it is a very good program, very good movie. Like I say, it's a conversation of Black radical tradition. Hit the trailer where it says underline there, where it says trailer, and it'll come up. Okay, cool. So let me see where I'm at. All right. So that's what we're gonna be doing. And every month I'm gonna have a movie to present. One of the movies, another movie, I think the next one's gonna be the Vanguard, Black Panther Party, the Vanguard of the Revolution. Okay. New African Independence Academy, right? I think that's plainly stated what needs to be done in regards to that. That we need to be able to have institutions in our community that's teaching the truth, right? Undiluted, right? And that it builds consciousness, raising consciousness, and build a team building, right, or cadre building, right, as part of the process of the academy. All right, but not only that, but it lends to organizing our community in support of our liberation and independence. And that's the reason why we need to have a national curriculum, right? So that when we have these academies across the country, that we're all teaching the same thing for the most part. All right, we talk group thing. That nationally, in terms of this development, is the youth panther groups or corps. Okay, we need to organize our young people. All right, we're losing too many of them to the gangs and to the streets. Okay, and for us, this youth corps is the means from which we can ensure that we are organizing our young people so that they at some point in time take the baton, right, as it's passed to them when it's prepared, and they're prepared to receive the baton and be in speed, and so that we don't lose momentum, right, in the struggle. That we ain't falling back 2 steps in order for people to catch up to where we are. That we're bringing them along with us. We're training our young people to become revolutionary, to become new Africans, to be prepared to contribute to governing. All right. So our youth corps speaks to itself, and actually we need to have our own children's centers. All right. We can't even have our enemies continue to raise our children, to raise our babies, from nurseries to kindergarten. Right. We need to have our own capacity to train, to educate, to raise our children from day one as they are infants. We need to have our own nurseries and our capacity within the overall movement. Right. As I state here, these centers are dependent on location. Will also serve the free breakfast programs and generally in support of the development community in respects to the growth of our children in conjunction with the PIC. So we want to have these children's centers, right, that will also be able to move these kids out of return first grade, second grade, fourth grade, right, into the youth corps. Okay, as transitioning into the youth corps. Well, now they become like Boy Scouts, right, Girl Scouts, where we have our own Panther Scouts, okay, or the youth corps, and we motivated them. So you see a transition from day of birth to the day of when you are part of the overall liberation movement of revolutionaries. That's what we need to do. Health clinics, we already know what that is about, right? The health inequities that we're confronting in this country are diabolical. They're deadly, right? And that's the reason why it was raised in the tribunal that the International Tribunal found the United States guilty charge of health inequities, right, as it relates to Black, brown, and indigenous people in this country, right? We are not receiving the best health care that we possibly can, right? We're definitely not using holistic medicines and herbal medicines as a means for curing, or not only in the sense of the means of curing, to be preventive of disease and preventive of harm, right? I think that's where we need to begin to start thinking in terms of decolonizing, right? Is that we don't want to treat the illness. We don't even want the illness, right? We want to be preventable of illnesses rather than just treating the illness. This country, in terms of healthcare, this healthcare is basically a death sentence. They are managing death rather than managing life, right? So what we want to do, create a program that serves to managing health towards ensuring our health and wellness. Okay, And that's where the health clinics was important. That's why the Black Panther Party established their health clinics back in the days, right? Established the first ones to establish a sickle cell anemia research. No one else was going to do it, so we have to do it. And very similar to today, where we need to develop our health clinics. And what else was that organized? It organizes our health professionals, right? Our nurses and our doctors, Black nurses and Black doctors, and saying you have an obligation to become part of the community, to bring your skills into the community and help us survive this onslaught of destruction, genocide that we're confronting on all kinds of different levels. All right, so that needs to be done. All right, and food co-ops. Right, we know we have food deserts in our community. Right, unhealthy food being presented in our community, and so it's apparent that we need to develop these food co-ops, particularly when organizing our people who is on the land or doing agriculture, right, doing that work on the land, who are producing food, fresh food, clean food. All right, where are they going to do that? Where are they going to send the food? Right? If this is done correctly, if this is done right, the food co-ops, we should have food co-ops across the country where we have began to then develop transportation and delivery systems, of food all around the country. Hey, that's organizing there. That's industry, right? Of our own, okay? From the ground to the table, right? Our own, all right? Building these food co-ops, right? And being able to work amongst each other in a collective form, in a cooperative form. So this co-ops is very important. It extends beyond just the idea of having a storefront or having a booth or a truck on the corner of the block, selling food out of like you see the watermelon truck. I remember the watermelon trucks we used to see back in the days, right? The guys coming out selling watermelon, selling produce right off the back of the truck. We need more than that. Right, we need to set up the capacity from which we are actually feeding our own. Right, like I said, from the ground to the table. Okay, New African Community Alert Patrols. We know what that's about. Right, Cop Watch. Right, as an example, or what we did in the Black Panther Party. Right, with that kind of organizing in defense of our party and in defense of our community. Right. We know that statistically it is established when the BLA was operating, before the BLA, the police were killing our people with impunity, right? When the BLA was operating and shooting back, the number of police killing of our people decreased. You're looking for the time period, right? Of police killing during a particular period of time, right? The time the BLA was operating, right? The number of our people being murdered decreased, right? When they destroyed the Black Panther Party and the Black Liberation Army, the number of people being murdered increased, okay? Because they knew there was no one out there to retaliate, right? They knew that if we ain't coming home at night, there's a possibility that you ain't gonna be coming home at night, okay? So they gave them pause, gave them reason to think twice about engaging in a process where they think they're gonna murder people and not be held accountable for it, or somebody not gonna be held accountable for it. Okay, and so for us, building our capacity to defend our community is extremely important. Right, we need to have an alert system in our community. At some point in time, perhaps we can develop a ham, what I call ham radio, or some kind of communication devices where our people will know that when something's jumping off in one part of the city, right, we send out the alert to other part of the city, right, and everybody converge on that area. All right, that's what happened with the Black Panther Party. When the Black Panther was vamped upon, the community came out in support of the party against the police. All right, and so for us, a community alert patrol and a system that does that is essential for us to hold at bay, right, those who are out there to kill us, to degrade us, to dehumanize us, particularly the police. Right, New African POW Assistance Program. I think it goes without saying that we need to ensure that we save and provide services for those who are inside our captives. We cannot leave them behind. We cannot forget about our POWs, and that Our POWs will grow as part of the movement. All right, we will lose people. They will be captured, and they will go inside. And if we don't have a support base for them, then that's on us, right? And naturally, if they know they have a support base, that they will be taken care of while they're inside, that lends to our brothers and sisters to be more engaging on the outside, right? Knowing that if they were captured, that they will have a support base for them, right? While they're on the inside. So that's extremely important. I was talking to a couple of people the other day, talking about PLM, Princess Lives Matter, specifically Kwame Shakur, him organizing on that level, right? Very important that we build the Prison Lives Matter across the country, because Prison Lives Matter is part of the Folanon, right? The ideology and the principles of that Prison Lives Matter comes from out of Folanon, Front for the Liberation of the African Nation. But one thing that is important for us to understand in that process is this. Imagine, right? 1750, right? There's an abolitionist movement up north, right? Frederick Douglass and all those folks, right? And Rose building an abolitionist movement up north, right? And the people who are enslaved don't know nothing about it. There's no connection. Do you understand what I'm saying? Right? So you got an abolitionist movement, but the people who are enslaved don't know nothing about it. There's no connection. Very similarly, that we have our brothers and sisters in a slave system, mass incarceration, slave system, and they don't know that we are outside fighting to end slavery, penal slavery, or for the liberation of our POWs and PPs. They have no clue, right? So we have to create that connection. And the way we create that connection, we have to divide an assistance program for those on the inside, right? So they know that they have people on the outside still continuing to fight, right? To continue to build the base from which we can move towards our liberation and independence, all right? So that's important, right? During the time of chattel slavery, right? Many, not all, but many of those who were enslaved knew that there was an abolitionist movement, right? On the outside. That's how Harriet Tubman was able to organize and free, what, I think 300 slaves or something like that. And the time that she was working, or maybe 1,000 in the time that she was working, right? And she said if they knew that they were slaves, she probably was able to liberate more, all right? It was a sort of they colonized mentality. And so this, for us, it is imperative that we organize our brothers and sisters on the inside, right? That we let them know that we love them, let them know that we are building a support base for them on the outside, right? As Ho Chi Minh once announced, he says, when the prison doors fly open, the real dragons will fly out, right? And that's what is the case for many of those brothers who became revolutionaries after having served time, have been in the belly of the beast, and have felt the extent of institutional racism in its harshness, right? In its most diabolical nature, right? And they come out in the streets and say, man, I got to find a movement. I got to get involved. I got to get engaged, okay? All right, so we have to have the processes for which they can come out and get into a reentry program, and that reentry program lends them to the ideas of participating and being part of the movement, right? And naturally, New African women's is very, very, very important, right? Our sisters have to get organized, right? Our sisters are the foundation for our movement, right? And we should not forget that. From the time of their giving birth to a new revolutionary, right, to the time that we are burying our children, the African women, New African women, play a vital role in our struggle. But that also means they need to be organized. They need to organize themselves in terms of that capacity. Our sister Alita, who organized the Men and Women March, right, did an excellent job. I would love for her to take on the whole to building this New African New African Women Organization, National Organization of New African Women, right? That'd be an excellent task. I would love for her to do so. I'm certain that if she were to do so, if we could persuade her to do so, that she would be able to organize a nice cadre, several cadres of New African women who are dedicated to the task of national liberation and independence. Following that 10-point platform. right? You all can read that. It is a combination of the platform from New Africa, the provisional government, and a combination of the 10-point program of the Black Panther Party. I tried to meld them together, right? That which was connected, unified, and connected to one another, right? So that is the section that we just went over is basically our organizational determination of falling down, right? What falling down would look like, right? In terms of is building these type of committees and organizing that be under the banner of floating on. And when that is done, believe me that we will have a movement that will be unstoppable. Unstoppable. Okay. And so, again, let me make this point clear, right? In terms of our struggle. And again, in terms of three-phase theory of national independence. The first phase, class struggle for national independence, is the most hardest, right? We have hundreds, if not thousands, of organizations across this country who are fighting in support of our people, all right? But we're confronting sectarianism. We're confronting fractionalism. We're confronting the disjointed and disconnection amongst these various organizations and groups, right? Much of it is as a result of how we have been colonized thinking, right? And when I say colonized thinking, I'm talking about this. The United States government or this corporate entity as a capitalist system is based upon two particular ideas, competition and individualism, right? And we've been indoctrinated, right, over the decades, over the centuries, to be individualists and to be in competition with one another, all right? And some of that indoctrination we have not fully exercised ourselves from it, right? And therefore we bring some of that baggage into our movement, right? And so we find some of our people in the movement still in competition, right? Or we find them still in the movement, still organizing as individualists rather than looking to build a comprehensive, organized body, national determination. Okay. And so that is part of the process, again, when I say talking about decolonizing, right? We need to ensure that we're fighting against liberalism, right? That's very important, right? We cannot withstand a wishy-washy movement, right, of liberalism, okay? That has to be addressed on all levels. Combat Liberalism, if you have not read it, I urge you to read Mao Zedong writings on combat liberalism. It is very good work. The principle that he talks about in that is very good. It's applicable to us today. Combat liberalism, combat sectarianism, okay? Where people organize themselves into sects. Well, this is our sect, right? It's very similar to these tribes in our community. Set banging, okay? Well, this is our area, this is our community. You can't come over here, blah blah blah, right? For what reason, right? That's ego. That's all that is, okay? And so we need to figure out ways how to challenge that and prevent that from corroding our movement and undermine our capacity to unify across the country. So when this first was written back in 1995, or promoted back in 1995, we did build what we call New African Liberation Front. Okay, we established administrative office, but again, because of what just mentioned, right, being liberal, right, and competition and liberalism, individualism was not able to sustain the New African Liberation Front based upon the principles that was originally established for Frolinar. So then I decided that it was necessary for us to reintroduce this information. We put it in a book, right, as we said, the Are Our Own Liberators, and try to have these kind of forums that we have in here, right, across the country, so we can begin to raise people's consciousness and organize them towards the ideals of the Front for Liberation of the New African Nation. I made mention the other day to some people. For those in our struggle who identify themselves as New Africans, right? Because not everybody in our struggle identifies themselves as New Africans. Well, those who do, we need to have a national conference, a national convention, so that we can really hash out what does it mean for us to be New Africans, and what does it mean for us in terms of what we say our model to free the land. All right. We need to get organized. Now, again, I'm not stuck on the name Falling Out Front for Liberation New African Nation. I'm not stuck on that, right? The name is not important. That's the reason why I forego when we did it back in 1995 to just New African Liberation Front, right? That was a consensus at that time amongst the various organizations who was reading and studying this material, right? I don't care if you call it a Hooga Booga organization, right? As long as it's a national organization for independence and liberation, that's what's important. As long as these principles are being applied and applicable, that's what's important. Okay, and so for me, I'm not stuck on the name, but I understand the necessity for this type of organization, and that's the reason why it is named thusly, and it's being promoted as such. So yeah. Is there any questions about what has been shared so far? No? No questions? Damn, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, give us a chance. You gotta give us a couple seconds, man.
All right. Yeah, because hey, bro, I got a lot to say. You know what I mean? Yeah, a lot to say. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, man. And we got to get on the same page, no doubt about it. That's the only way we're going to win. Our unity is our strength is in our unity. Right? Our strength is in our unity. The stronger our unity, the stronger our strength, right? And it makes us undefeatable, for fact. Have you read my poem, What Color's Your Blues? I like this poem. It's one of the first ones that I wrote that I said, damn, I like this one. Yeah. So after that, we go into the handbook, right? And the handbook deals with all the principles and concepts that were applied to understanding the struggle itself, right? The organizational determination of the struggle is based upon the handbook, and the handbook is I don't know. I think it's excellent, right? Again, it's a compilation of materials from various other organizations and groups, condensed and synthesized into a handbook. Okay. If you study the handbook, the other day I was in a conversation with some people, and I told them if you have not read the handbook, right, then one thing that you really must pay attention to is page 158. Commitment is key, right? That is the heart of this handbook. Right? Commitment is key. If you don't, and I told people on that Zoom, I said, if you're not committed, ain't no way you should be here. Is that with y'all? Did I do that with y'all? No? Okay. All right. So, but commitment is the key, and it's important for us to know what your commitment is, and to what extent that you're willing to commit yourself to struggle. Yes, I
was gonna say we got like 2 minutes left. They gonna cut us off.
Okay. All right, comrade.
We come back.
All right, well, listen,
think we did do, commitment is key. I think we did go over that, but we can go over it again if you want to know.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen. One thing I'm gonna ask all of you, right? At the next session, right? Bring 2 more people with you. Okay, if you can, invite 2 more people. Let's build this study session up so we have 20s, 30s, 40 people online with us, if at all possible. But if this group is just a cadre of itself, right, and you guys build it as a cadre of yourself, then I understand that, and then we'll just leave it as it is, okay? Because it's important that a cadre be solid, right? Brothers and sisters, listen. Back in the days, we used to sit in my living room. Me, Sheikh Noor, may Allah reward him, Gabriel Torres, Francisco Torres, and Herman Bell. We used to sit down in my living room and we just study, just read, okay, and discuss. It came to a point in time where ain't nothing to talk about no more, right? About taking care of some business, right? And we had that kind of understanding with each other. Our mind was melded together to the point where we was willing to go and sacrifice for each other. That I knew the man behind me had my back and I didn't have to look backwards, right? I knew he was there, okay? The man on my side, I knew he was there, okay? I didn't have to turn my head to see if he's there, right? I'm just focused on the task, okay? Because we had that kind of unity, we had that kind of dedication, we had that kind of commitment, right? And we had that kind of understanding of one another, understanding our truth, understanding our strengths and our weaknesses, right? And engagement, right? And so cadre building, that's what cadre building is about, right? Building that kind of trust, right? Authentic trust that you have amongst each other, okay? And when you have that trust coupled with love with each other, that's a bond. That's a life-going bond. Herman and I, every time we see each other, there's a smile on our face, right? We've been in the trenches, both inside and outside, right? Together. And I think we know each other. We don't agree on everything, right? We don't agree on everything, but we know we've been through these trenches together, okay? And so that is very important as well. All right, comrades, listen, I'm going to let y'all go. I'm going to get me some vittles. All right, I haven't eaten yet, and my beautiful wife has cooked us a sumptuous meal, right? Most often than not, I do the cooking around here, but don't say that out loud. Right? But she cooked a sumptuous meal, and I am going to go eat, my brothers. All right?
All right.
Peace, y'all. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam, free land. All right.
Thank you,
Free
brother
land.
Jalil.
And free them all. Yes.